Welcome back to all of our listeners to the Photography Podcast for Beginners. Today is the third episode, and we're talking all things from developing your own style of photography with editing to the business side of photography and how you move your hobby into a more business and commercial space. So today I have with me someone I've known since high school, actually. We started our photography and video career in the same place, and that was New Canaan High School. And we both moved on to different things. We're at different colleges, but I wanted to bring this guest on today to talk a little bit more about the business side of photography, since he's taken that step of moving from a hobby into the business space within his university. So James does sports photography and videography for the University of Rhode Island, and he's the photo editor for his student newspaper at University of Rhode Island. So I want to bring him on today to talk about all those things. If you're thinking of turning your hobby into a business and how to get started making that switch. All right, so now I'm going to bring on James. James, we're hopping on a Zoom call right now. How you doing today?
How are you, Luke?
I promise I didn't make James wait for a while I set up.
Yeah.
He just hopped on right now, right?
Yep, I just got out of the shower and I'm ready to...
No, that was me. First, I think we should talk about how we both got our start in photography and videography, because I think we both know a little bit about each other's stories, but I think just for the listeners, it's good to kind of get that backstory before we move on to the business end of things. So how did you get started in photography and videography?
Yeah, it started, I think in middle school, from the transition from 8th grade to high school, and I visited New Canaan High School. And I went over to NCTV, I guess, where they were camped out. And that kind of was something that kind of intrigued me going into high school. But yeah, throughout high school, from single cam events, from going out there and just, experimenting with, just setting up a tripod. NCTV was a great stepping stone and kind of a great start, a great beginning to kind of my passion, and also just kind of taught me kind of the fundamentals to how to, act with the crew and how to act around people, doing a job while at a sporting event, not being a fan, but being more of a, professional, covering a game for people to watch.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I didn't realize how important the whole team aspect of production was until NCTV. And for our listeners at home, I'm gonna embarrass both of us by playing a short clip of our weatherman and sports anchor right here. So
I know I certainly have some big shoes to fill, both figuratively and literally. I'm Luke Pelli. Thanks, guys. Well, it sure feels great to be back here and out of the studio for once. And I'm Luke Pelli, reporting here for the first time behind the main desk.
So don't get cringed out too much, but at least you get a little context of, it was a high school news thing that we did every Friday. And we also would go to all the sports games at our high school and do videography, multicam events for those, and also single cam events. So the whole town could watch, the high school sports. And yeah, one of the biggest things I took away from that was how important the team aspect is, because on our Friday broadcast, everyone had their specialized task. You all had a big picture throughout the week. And then come broadcast time, you had your graphics guy, your switcher, teleprompter. I feel like the teleprompter always messed up the most, but when you're reading the teleprompter, everything trips you up. So I had a few embarrassing teleprompter mishaps. But even that, everyone's important to the team, and that made me want to start my own production company, which I've done now. And I'm still just a one-man crew, but I know in the future that it's going to be so beneficial for me to bring on an editor, bring on specialized people to help me with certain tasks.
I kind of find it funny that you kind of started in high school with reading off a script. Now it's kind of now you're working with the podcast.
I'm freeballing it, baby. Yeah. Well, podcasts, I was saying to James before we started that podcasts are the hardest medium for me, because I like editing what I say so much, because I feel I like to develop a story, and you get that in editing. Editing's such a big part of developing the story with your cuts and your pacing. But with a podcast, it's just a conversation. So, but obviously some people like podcasts and listen to them and enjoy them more, especially for a learning environment. Like right now we're trying to teach photography to people, so this is a good medium for that, because you just kind of get to listen in to two photographers talking about their experiences, which I know I benefited from a lot when I was first getting started. Me and James have shared back and forth, our favorite YouTubers and photographers like Sam Colder, Peter McKinnon. Do you have any names you want to shout out there?
Mitchell Mullins, and then there's also this channel TMS Productions.
Yep. You got me onto them. I remember that. I tried doing one of their video editing contests, but I had this computer, so it was before I bought my iMac, and they had like massive files because they like supplied the footage. So I'm like, no, I'm just waiting till I get a better computer. Okay, so that's how we kind of got our start through NCTV. We won't talk about that too much because those were our formative days of our youth.
Yeah, I want to shout out Roman Cebulski.
Roman, if you're watching this, I know he's always following my Twitter, so he's probably watching this, even though I never use my Twitter.
I think that one game when I was in the lift, and he came over and kind of showed me the ropes. I think that definitely kind of helped me with like just how I continue. How I've kind of worked today with football and shooting on the sidelines.
And can you just so that's actually a perfect segue to talking about kind of you're now doing stuff with University of Rhode Island. Is that like a kind of like more like the NCTV side where it's a crew of people, or are you kind of the solo guy?
It's a crew of people. I think it's a smaller. It's like like 3 or 4. Like I guess there are a couple of videographers. It's not just a team of videographers or filmmakers. There's people that are doing photos. There are people that are doing graphics. There are people that are doing videos. Some are responsible for making a video. Sometimes like this past football season, I would go out to away games, and I'd be the only one there. So like I would really try to I would have not pressure, but just kind of like a responsibility to I guess best represent Rhody football and like the social media.
Say this, I know event videography is one of the most stressful things you could ever do because you can't go back and retake anything. I've done a few weddings for video and for photography, and that's like so stressful. And it's the same for any event, because if you miss something, you can't tell the actors to go back, let's take that again, let's cut. You really just have to get it, and you have to accept like, oh, I'm gonna miss something. This trick play might trick me. I know, like, that's always the funniest thing when I'm watching football on TV and a trick play is good enough that it tricks the videographer and they're going the wrong way, and then you realize the ball's down there. So that's a perfect example, like just how high stress that environment is. You talked a little bit about how your team has graphics people, photographers. Have you done any of the photography side, or do you strictly stay within the video?
So yeah, I mean, I've done a little bit of photography. I mean, I've gotten close, I guess, so there's this person I've been working with, like for one of the coaches for URI football, Chris Sato. He kind of brought me into kind of like the, I guess, football culture with being able to, do video, but he's also works with like the social media page as well. But he's been kind of like, so like basically I have been, taking photos as well. Currently I'm taking photos of the new Rhode Island recruits, like new football players that are coming in for that are potentially going to sign with Rhode Island. I started last weekend with one recruit coming up from Connecticut, and then this weekend there's going to be more recruits coming. So more photos.
Yeah. So for the recruit photos, are you doing those in a studio space, or are they outside?
For the last weekend, we took some in, I guess, the interview room. We kind of set it up into like a studio environment. We also took some pictures briefly outside. It was pretty cold, but it was still kind of fun. We got to go out to the field and the practice field, and don't underestimate your practice field for a good, nice backdrop for photos. It's just kind of a nice kind of, I guess it's generic, but it looks good.
Yeah. My commercial photography class that I'm in now is all studio stuff, and that class has made me realize how much I like shooting outside, because when you're cramped in a small space, I don't know, I feel like your creativity is as well. But when I'm outside, like doing lifestyle photography, everything's your backdrop. So
interesting how inside you're really depending on outlets.
Yeah.
like for lighting. And then with outside, it's like you're depending on where the sun is in the sky, where it's like, is it high up in the sky? Are you, using like reflectors or like bouncing light off?
Yep.
Shooting outside is definitely less expensive because you don't need big studio lights like what I have shining down on me in here. But you also have to be a little bit more creative and a little bit more flexible because, it may start raining. The sun might be like too bright and there's no clouds diffusing it. And you got to, prop up some diffusion on some like tree branches or whatever you have to do. But I think that's a good thing to bring up since this podcast is mainly focusing on lifestyle photography, because I recognize that like not everyone's gonna have a studio space. They may just have to like shoot outside or shoot wherever they can, whether that's in their own home. Okay, so before we move on to the next topic, do you have anything that you think like the viewers should know about how you kind of made that switch and made the connection with the football team?
Yeah, so I mean, it's taken 3 years. It's, I started freshman year, continued sophomore year, and I've made, like right now I've considered it kind of like not a peak, but it's a great stepping stone, a place that, I've really kind of aspired to be at. Freshman year, I joined my university's student newspaper. Joining that club, that organization, has really like allowed me to see a lot of different parts of campus, and has also allowed me an opportunity to dive into the sports videography and photography. I mean, there I got to shoot highlights from like men's basketball games for the newscast. So a little bit of kind of reminded me a lot of, it's a lot of what I did for NCTV.
So like journalistic type of, yeah.
I was really thankful to have like an opportunity to work with a coach and kind of build that rapport. And then now I've also been fortunate to know people that have led me to work with the marketing team.
So I guess my takeaways from that, and for anyone listening, would be if you are kind of a hobby photographer and you're looking to maybe land a job or land an internship or whatever you want to do in photography or video, the most important things are kind of making connections and building your network, as well as your experience and your work itself. If you're a photographer or a videographer, your work is your portfolio. So you need to kind of beef that up. Whether it's doing, you hear people say like never do free jobs, but I say, while you're building your portfolio, either steal your friends away or do some like free jobs for maybe a family member to really build up that portfolio. So when you want to approach someone to turn that hobby into a career, you have that work to show for it. And the biggest thing you want to demonstrate in your portfolio is that all those settings and all those nuances that go into making a production run smooth or making a photo session run smooth. So, if you want to watch episode 1 and 2, you'll get a lot of those basics. But so yeah, you were building up your connection. You started with kind of like an entry level position. You were able to take that connection that you have with the coach and that network that you had started to build and merge that into a position that you were looking to get into. Where do you see yourself after college? Do you want to stay within the sports and event videography or photography space?
Yeah, so I think I've definitely gotten a lot of experience in college and high school. Would help, I guess in terms of finding a job in sports videography
It's totally understandable to not have an answer for that junior year. I'm a senior about to end my second to last semester, and I probably couldn't tell you right now. But yeah, my reason for that question would just be, do you feel like the work you're doing now is a good way to prepare yourself for the workforce, which it seems like it is for you? Because I feel like you're doing that kind of next step from you start with something as a hobby or whether you're doing it in high school or whatever it is, and then you kind of take all these steps and build your work, have all these experiences to then bring into the workforce. I think you're a perfect example of someone who isn't like out of college yet, not like a full professional or working full time, but is still doing enough now to set himself up for the work he wants to do later.
Yeah, I've been able to like attend, amazing opportunities, have amazing opportunities, I guess with the photography that I've done, but I've also like learned about like kind of like directing others and kind of teaching others what I've learned. That's been definitely a big thing with being like the photo editor for the cigar.
Well, this is a perfect place to be able to teach others through your experiences, because that's what we're aiming to do here. Not that we're, I guess, experts, but I feel like we know enough to be able to teach the beginners, and that's why I feel like when I was getting started, I would always try and watch like a photography podcast, but they were like so expert and advanced, and it's like these two old guys talking about bird photography. So this one I want to make more relatable, two young college students who are more serious about their passions in photography and video, and who want to help others get to where they are.
I know you're saying like old men with bird photography, but I do know a college student that is into bird photography and wildlife. So
it's not just the old guys. Yeah, I'm singling out a specific podcast. So if you know who I'm talking about, then you know. No, I'm not. I have no beef with anyone. Okay, so you also work as a photo editor for the school newspaper at University of Rhode Island. Can you talk a little bit about what that work entails?
Yeah, so it involves assigning stories to photographers, not just myself, but having a team of photographers. And this semester there's been a bunch of new photographers that have joined the newspaper, and some have stayed, some have gone. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just about the equipment. I feel like it's important having like, a good idea of, it's not just about the equipment, but it's also about the your knowledge about like composition and camera settings, but also just what makes seeing the world in a different way.
That photographer's eye, which you brought up with seeing the world in a different way, is something that once you have it, you can't turn it off. Every time I'm walking down the street or walking in the park, I'm always like, oh, it's a nice composition. The trees are framing that walkway nicely. It's like how, I don't know, if you're an engineer, you're always looking at things and thinking about how they work. It's the same with photography. So once you develop that through experience and through learning those basics of composition, you start to see them in your everyday life, and that's what really helps you with like lifestyle photography. Not that that's what you do, but when you get started, you're doing like lifestyle stuff. So once you start, that's a perfect example. Like once you learn the basics, you can then implement that in your photography and in your everyday life as well. With photography, I think that the thing that really starts to set people apart and set them apart from beginners to like actually knowing what they're doing is the photo editing part of it. So that's kind of using Lightroom to edit your photos, whether that's like making some presets, using other people's presets, and then tweaking them to your work. But the big thing is you can use photography to bring out emotions, moods, feels, and you do that through editing. If you look at every photo that I post, at least now, is edited. And we're not talking about like face tuning or tightening my stomach or whatever, but like playing with colors, using color theory, using contrasting colors, evening out your exposure and your shadows and your highlights, to really bring the most out of a photo. So I think that a big thing that beginners need to learn to stop being called beginners is photo editing, and that's something I put off for a long time. Did you immediately start editing your photos when you started, or did that come with like the work that you're doing now? Did they tell you like, oh, you have to edit these photos?
I think for editing for like the newspaper, I know with like Lightroom Classic, there's a bunch of ways that you can change an image and the way it looks and the way colors are saturated or desaturated, or the hue or like the color looks. I guess for like the newspapers, for the newspaper, there hasn't been too much color corrections or like having a preset. It's been kind of more like just trying to keep the photo the way it was shot. The biggest thing, I guess, is just like the way our like newspaper prints. We want to make sure like the images are kind of lighter instead of dark. So I think that's really been kind of the biggest thing that with editing.
And it's hard because you're in like a journalistic photography kind of space where it's more focused on like realism and taking photos like how they appear. Mm-hmm. And it's not like editorial or like fashion photography where you're like editing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little bit about so for me, I think the biggest influences for like developing my photography style is like, I love film photography, and I also love like movies. So like, and they're two kind of contrasting things, because movies have like dark shadows and contrasting colors and like blues and oranges, and like film photography just has like a soft look to it. So I took all that in and I started to like play with my photos to kind of get them to look like they're a movie or look cinematic or look like they're film photography. And that's kind of where I am now in how I edit my photos. Obviously your styles change, but I like the moods that that type of photography conveys.
I think there's still things that I need to like learn. I mean, I think especially like kind of doing like putting value to my work, and like, you know, I don't have like too much experience, I guess, with pricing myself or pricing my work. So I think that's something that like I still need to learn more. But yeah, I mean, I think joining organizations, when, you know, like if you're an incoming freshman, like going to the orientation night or like first night, and, you know, trying to find, you know, an organization that kind of talks about, you know, photography and its pitch. That's
actually a really good thing or good point to end on, because I feel like people always ask me like, or they say like, oh yeah, I always want to get into photography. Like I took this photo with my iPhone like 2 months ago, and I'm like, all right, if you want to get into photography, like start shooting more, start shooting like with your friends, start reaching out to people, join photography clubs, go to Facebook, look up Philly Photographer Club or Rhode Island Photographer Club, and like just meet with people in your area and take photos, because you learn so much from other people and from other photographers that like they'll pick up something that you don't know, and you might be able to share some stuff that you know. So the photography community is usually very helpful, with the exception of Facebook groups. If you're in any Sony groups, you know what I'm talking about. It's the funniest thing. I'm only in it because it's hilarious watching. It's a train wreck, but normally a photographer that you meet in real life is happy to show you the ropes. And if for whatever reason they're not, you have us on this podcast to fill in the gaps a little bit. So James, it was great sitting down with you today and sharing a little bit about your experience with photography and video. I'm excited to see what you do going forward. I've kept up with all the stuff you've been doing right now, and the trajectory of where you're going seems to be exponential. My brother would be proud of that, because he talked about how he was an engineer in the last one. He said all his engineer stuff, so I just used some big words there. All right.
Thank you, Luke, for having me.
Well, guys, that was the end of this third and final episode. For now, I may pick it back up, but you know, when I'm feeling like talking for a while at a time. So if you wanna keep up to date on what I'm putting out, just subscribe, hit the like button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. James, you want to say peace?
Peace. And if you want to see some more of my work.
Oh, yeah. Definitely check out James. James, would you like to say where they can find you?
I mean, I've been posting a lot of my work on my Instagram, trying to like work on my website, but on Instagram, you can follow me at Jimmy Singer 20. Yeah, at Jimmy Singer 20.
It'll be below the video.
Little
so you'll
secret.
see it.
The 20, it changes each year.
Nice. A little Easter egg.
A little Easter egg.
Nice.
But it'll probably stop maybe 24, 25, but then.
Yeah, when you start caring about your age.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, everyone definitely check out James. He's got some great stuff over there. He's actually the reason why I got my first drone, so you never know what fun tips you might pick up from James. And we didn't even talk about drones at all, which I feel like that needs its own episode. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.